Imagine a king so powerful, his name echoed across empires. He sat atop gold and glory, feared by enemies and adored by allies. But behind the grand walls of his palace, something unthinkable was happening. His body was betraying him, day by day, inch by inch. He was rotting while still alive. This isn't some twisted legend whispered in taverns. It's a real case, recorded in history books, court diaries, and medical accounts. What made it worse? No one dared speak of it aloud. To say the king was decaying was to commit treason. His courtiers masked the stench with incense. Doctors stood helpless, offering leeches and prayers. Priests whispered that he was cursed by God himself. He watched helplessly as his skin blackened. His wounds refused to heal. His flesh fell off in chunks, and all the while he ruled, issued commands, held court, and waited for death. But death didn't come quickly. It lingered. It tortured. It made an example of him. This is the bizarre, horrifying case of King Charles VIII of France. Was it someone else? Long before the decay set in, he was a vision of royal vigor, handsome, young, and proud. He ascended the throne with ambition in his eyes. He was born to rule, groomed from birth for power and glory. His court was the envy of Europe. Artists, musicians, generals, and scholars bowed before him. He dreamed of conquest, of carving his name into the world map. He was not content with France. He wanted Italy, the riches of Naples, the honor of Rome, the crown of a greater empire. He launched his campaign with thousands of soldiers, and for a time, it seemed like he could win it all. But in the shadows, something else began to win. A sickness that would destroy everything he had built. Some say it was a wound from battle. Others whisper of a disease he brought back from abroad. Still, others believe it was punishment from God. The first signs were subtle. Fatigue, a fever that would not go, sores that appeared and refused to close. He hid it, of course. What king could be seen weak? But the palace doctors saw it, and they were horrified. His body was beginning to rot. Alive, awake, aware. His skin turned gray, then black. His nose began to cave inward. His legs swelled with fluid, and ulcers tore through his flesh. The stench filled every hall he walked. People began avoiding him. Servants turned their faces when they passed. Some fainted from the smell. Others vomited. Still, he ordered the windows shut to keep rumors out. He tried perfumes and oils, but nothing could hide the truth. Parts of his body literally sloughed off in bed. Sheets soaked with pus and blood had to be burned. His teeth loosened and fell out. His breath was unbearable. And yet, he ruled. He still held court, sat on his throne with open sores bleeding beneath his robes. The palace was divided. Some said it was syphilis. Others said necrosis from an infected wound. But no one had ever seen this before, this level of decay in the living. He became less man, more ghost. Each day, he looked less like a king and more like a corpse. Rumors began to swirl that the king was cursed. A priest claimed he had offended a saint. Another said he had broken a vow made to God. Astrologers blamed a blood moon seen months before. Enemies whispered of poison. Some accused his closest advisors. Was it political sabotage? A slow-working toxin slipped into his meals. But science tells a different story. Modern scholars believe he may have suffered from tertiary syphilis, a disease not well understood at the time. It had been sweeping through Europe since the Italian Wars, and he had marched his army straight into its path. Syphilis eats the body from within. It ravages the skin, the brain, the nerves. It can lead to ulcers, gangrene, and yes, Levin, rot still. Many believed it was divine punishment. A king who had sinned too deeply, lived too lavishly, lusted too openly. And now, he was paying the price inch by inch. The royal palace became a place of dread. The once lavish halls now stank of death, and herbs healers came and went, each more desperate than the last. Bloodletting became daily routine. Leeches crawled across his flesh. They tried mercury, thinking it would balance his humors. It only worsened the decay. Guards refused to stay on duty in his chambers. Maids cried as they carried soiled linens. His queen avoided him entirely. The council of nobles began meeting in secret. Whispers of abdication rose in volume. But who could dethrone a living king? Even if he was half. He heard the whispers. He knew what they were saying. and he grew paranoid. He ordered executions of suspected traitors, dismissed advisors he had trusted for years. He began locking his doors at night. He would sit alone in the dark, smelling his own flesh die, and he waited for a miracle, one that never came. Despite the pain, he clung to the image of kingship. He still wore the crown, even as his scalp blistered underneath it. He forced himself to sit tall on his throne, even when his bones ached. When ambassadors arrived, he greeted them with a painted face. Makeup covered the sores until it began melting from fever. His robes were redesigned to hide the worst of his wounds. Silken gloves covered fingers that no longer had nails, but behind closed doors, he screamed in agony. The pain was constant, burning, festering, biting. He could no longer sleep without opiates and wine. He began hallucinating. He claimed to see angels and demons fighting in his chamber. Sometimes he spoke in tongues or called out to people long dead. Some said the disease had reached his brain. Others said it was guilt, the sins of war, the blood of the innocent, the greed for land and glory. Now all that remained was a man imprisoned in his own flesh, a king without a future, a body without a cure, a soul awaiting judgment, still breathing but not truly alive, still rotting but not yet dead. As the king's health declined, the nation teetered on the edge of collapse. Nobles fought for power and backed princes eyed the throne with greedy ambition. Foreign spies infiltrated the palace. Sensing opportunity, the army began losing faith in their leader. Generals took orders, but whispered rebellion. The people outside the palace were restless. They heard stories from servants who fled in horror, tales of a king who oozed death and madness. Fires were lit outside cathedrals, prayers for deliverance. Some claimed the land was cursed. The crops failed. The rivers flooded. The sky darkened with storms. Every misfortune was blamed on the decaying king. God has turned his face away from us, they said. Still, he would not step down. He held the throne with dying hands. Each day, his signature grew. Each word he spoke, more slurred. He was a puppet king, but still dangerous. No one dared challenge him openly, but the knives were sharpening. Behind velvet curtains, betrayal was ripening. In his last weeks, the king barely spoke. He lay in a darkened chamber, covered in oils and bandages. Only the bravest servants entered, some out of duty, others for bribes. His limbs were cold, mottled with black patches. He was fed through a silver spoon, like a helpless child. He could no longer control his bodily functions. The bed had to be replaced every few days. By now, no one pretended he would recover. The royal physicians had fled or resigned. One priest stayed by his side, offering last rites every evening. But the king refused to die. His body, broken beyond reason, clung to life. Some said the devil was keeping him alive. Others believed he was too proud to let go. He murmured in his sleep names, prayers, curses. Sometimes he opened his eyes and whispered, "It burns." A small group of loyalists still prayed for a miracle, but most waited in dread, checking daily for news of his passing. Would today be the day? Would it finally end? The guards at his door grew fewer. The tapestries were removed. They reeked of death, and the bells of the cathedral waited to toll. One cold morning, the king's chamber fell silent. No groans, no whispers, only the faint flutter of a curtain. The priest approached the bed. The king's eyes were open, staring at nothing. His mouth hung slightly ajar. And there, in the stinking shadows of the royal bed, lay the corpse of a man who had rotted while alive. The death announcement was delayed. His body was sealed quickly in a lead coffin. No public viewing, no grand procession. The courtiers feared the disease might still spread. The palace was scrubbed with vinegar and ash. Dozens of servants were dismissed or vanished. The official cause of death, a mysterious fever, the truth was buried with him. But the rumors lived on. They said he died in pieces, that worms had reached his heart before his soul left it. Even in death, the smell lingered for weeks. The king had finally died. But what kind of life had he really lived? His reign became a warning to those who followed, not of war or politics, but of hubris, of believing one could defy nature, fate, and God. His portraits were destroyed, or hidden chroniclers wrote around the truth. But some dared to include the horror whispers of a monarch who ruled while decaying doctors centuries later studied his case. Historians debated the cause: syphilis, gangrene, leprosy, poison. Whatever the diagnosis, the story remains unforgettable. a reminder that no crown can protect against mortality. That flesh is flesh even if royal. That power cannot mask decay forever. His enemies rejoiced at his death, but his people mourned the myth, not the man. He became a symbol of divine justice or divine cruelty, a tale told in hushed voices and forgotten pages. The king who rotted alive, a man who sat on a golden throne while his body turned to dust. And even centuries later, his name sends chills down the spine, because he wasn't a monster. He was human just like us, and that's what makes it so terrifying.